The algae bloom was so extreme in July of 2016 last year. People were wearing masks. People didn't know what to do. Of course, it was worse for people who lived in cove areas where the algae and water would circulate and gather. That our beaches were, when you went out to the beach, the waves were green, just like full of algae, green like St. Patrick's Day parade with chunks of algae in it. It was, I want to use curse words because it was just so crazy. And I think that it reached 414 as far as toxicity.
My name is Maria Feldman, and I am an environmental science graduate student at Green Mountain College. I was teaching science for 2 years at Pahokee in the Lake Okeechobee bioregion. I would drive for many long miles, passing farmland on my way to work. I would always notice the toxic smoke that was brewing from the sugarcane factories, and I wondered about the impact on the health of the people and the environment of the area. My main focus is on the watershed and effect that the farms have on the main water source, Lake Okeechobee, since all of the runoff flows into it. I interviewed scientists, professors, former mayors, and people that resided in that area. I also borrowed clips from the Weather Channel showing the impact of storms and hurricanes on the environment. What I discovered was shocking and compelling, and I would like to spread the truth of my journey through learning about agriculture and Lake Okeechobee.
What happens when the watershed, it's got a lot of drainage in it because we had to drain it for our farms and our cities, and that made some progress in Florida. But that drainage also runs the water into Okeechobee super fast, and it makes the lake super deep. And when it gets super deep, plants that grow in the marsh, even though they're marsh plants, the water gets so deep it gets up to their neck, and it drowns them too. And so during some of the storms, we've actually lost about 70 square miles of plant communities on this lake. 70 square miles of plants. And you go out there after the storms are over and the deep water's over, and it's just open, dirty water. There's no plants, there's no bugs, there's no birds, there's no fish, there's no nothing. And this is one of the most famous fishery lakes in the nation. In the Everglades, whether you care about birds or fish or not, it's their drinking water. People in this region have a high rate of liver problems that are not related to alcohol, that they're from something else, and it's possible it's from these cyanobacteria.
Researchers in Ohio State University discovered that the blue-green algae, also known as microcystine and cyanobacteria, causes non-alcoholic liver damage, as well as many of the blooms Martin County and the Florida Department of Environmental Protection sampled had toxic levels well above the 10 part per billion the World Health Organization considers hazardous in the recreational physical contact. Although the algal blooms are a natural phenomenon, they are exacerbated by the farms surrounding the lake, as well as the anthropocentric and high-developed areas on the coast. This water affects our food and local farms.
But the number one destruction is being connected to Lake Okeechobee through the C-44 canal, because when they open that gate and allow the waters of Lake Okeechobee to run into our St. Lucie River, by the time that happens, or when that happens, we're already at a breaking point in the river, because we have 3 other canals that run into the river that were built. We also have, a lot of impacts from population along the Indian River Lagoon and St. Lucie River, and also all the runoff from the agriculture that is the majority, almost 2/3 of our county, which has been routed to the river, so that now our estuary gets at least twice as much water as it was meant to naturally. And so the observations from the air are very clear. And so it's a wonderful thing. It's true that a picture speaks 1,000 words, and you don't have to say much because people see it and they're like, oh my God, that's an absolute ecological disaster, and it's happening right here. And from the ground, I can see it, but it's not the same as seeing it from above. And for instance, the first pictures we took, my husband and I, were in 2013 when we had serious releases from Lake Okeechobee. And after, I think they went from May to October that year, and the river turned basically the color of coffee, and there was so much sediment in the water that it was just unbelievable. And when you would see it from the dock, it looked disgusting, and there were bubbles and all sorts of dirt and everything, and a little bit of algae here and there. But when you saw it from the air, it was just breathtaking, disgusting, breathtaking.
Below it, we have to dump massive amounts of water, and what we do is we dump them down to the estuaries on the St. Lucie and the Caloosahatchee side, and it's just so much fresh water, it kills all their saltwater organisms. It kills their seagrasses, it kills their oysters, the crabs leave, the fish leave, and it's a disaster for them, it's a disaster for the lake. It's because we can't control the water levels in the lake. So we have nutrient pollution with phosphorus, we have water level problems, and we have exotic species, plants like cattails and water hyacinth and other things, that torpedo grass that get in the lake, and we have to go out and treat them too. So those are the three main problems. And basically the farms are fertilizing with phosphorus, the cities have people in them, and people have a waste stream too that goes through our waste treatment plants, and all those nutrients get into our watershed, and then when it rains they all wash into Lake Okeechobee. And the other problem is the watershed's 5 times bigger than the lake, so when we get a hurricane that comes through, or a big storm, every inch of runoff from the watershed raises the lake 5 inches.
I couldn't get it out of my head that I had students who I will not disclose for their privacy, which were suffering with asthma and other health impairments. Could it be that the farms were at fault here? It was appalling to see that the smoke from the factories hovered directly above the school. Was this even legal? I contacted local officials who claimed that this indeed was an illegal act, and when I contacted the deputy sheriff, he began to threaten me and insult my intelligence for even bringing up the issue of the environment with Donald Trump in office. I heard fear in his voice, and I was told that I was to write a detailed script of questions for him to approve in order to conduct an interview. I had come across an article by the Sun Centennial discussing the sugar cane and the illegal burnings. It also came to mind that Big Sugar owns the government. In this article, Andy Reid discusses the fire burnings of South Florida. He discusses that the environmental agencies like the Sierra Club are also very against these burnings, as the ashes float right into the city and right over people's houses. I remember when I was working there, I would go outside and I would see black ash falling from the sky. I would also see students wearing garbage bags over their heads just to get to the school buses, all because of these sugarcane burnings. The USDA had refused an interview with me, even though I had even shown up. There was absolutely no one there to answer my questions. I was able to enter the USDA's office. Although it was very empty and creepy, I was able to look around. There was no one there to open the door. However, I was able to find outdated research catalogs from 2007. It emphasized many highlights of that year. However, there were no articles regarding the sugarcane or anything regarding South Florida's agriculture.
My name is Jackie Thurlow Lippish. My husband and I are famous for flying over in airplanes, taking pictures of environmental destruction of our St. Lucie River, Indian River Lagoon, and Lake Okeechobee. And the goal is to try to raise awareness to better the situation. And again, my husband and I took pictures and documented it, coming from the lake. And, we were almost always the ones reporting it first because we became kind of like a watchdog for our area. The health department didn't put signs out until long after. They've been called on the carpet for that. But I think there was just not good coordination between the state, and really we're in new territory. People just were not accustomed to this kind of situation, especially in wonderful South Florida. And we're an affluent community. Martin County is one of the, not that it matters, but it's one of the most affluent counties, and you would think that the people there would be concerned about their tax dollars and making sure that they're getting information, but there were a lot of overlooking there was not enough oversight, and it was a true disaster. And finally, Senator Joe Negron, who's our senator from here, who's been helping a lot with the whole situation, he with a lot of influence from people who know a lot about the situation, he encouraged the Army Corps of Engineers to do what they call as pulse releasing. So they weren't dumping all the water out at one time. They would dump it and stop, dump it and stop, dump it and stop. And as soon as they did that, the estuary had just enough of an ability to have the tidal flush bring in some salt into the estuary, and those algae blooms started to dissipate. And so, that was a good lesson learned, that the pulse releases make a huge difference to subjecting people to this kind of toxicity. And, of course, there's always this huge argument about, we're like the chosen ones for them to dump on. Why isn't more water going south? The agriculture communities blocking the water. The agricultural communities like to point out that now, not in the past, but now they can blame, quote unquote, the people from the north, like Orlando, for all the junk going into the lake. And, the real sad part about all of this, and this is always the case, is that there is clear documentation. I am very astute with history. My mother's a historian. There is clear documentation back to the 1960s that Lake Okeechobee was becoming eutrophic. Eutrophic means that it had too much fertilizer type of stuff, too much nitrogen and phosphorus, and that it was going to start blooming, and that it was unhealthy, and that we were making it a reservoir instead of a lake. And we knew this. We knew this. The scientists knew this. The government people knew this. But it's always the same. In German, they say it's immer der gleiche Theater, and that means it's always the same theater. And that means that power rules, and we do nothing until we are in a total crisis situation. And in the meanwhile, which was really 50 years, my whole lifetime, I was born in 1964, we just kept kind of ignoring the problem, not really dealing with it intensely enough, promoting more development in wetlands, building more agriculture in wetlands, redirecting waterways, and just exacerbating the problem. And now it has reached a point where it's that tipping point that now it's coming back on us, and we have a choice. Are we going to learn to make this a new economy, because we can, and find ways to change the way we live and change how we do agriculture? Or are we going to sit here and fight like rams head to head while the whole thing just dies around us? And what human beings will do is we will just leave. We will leave, and we can leave. People have been moving around for hundreds of thousands of years, but it's stupid if you have the ability to fix the situation more than destroy it. And even birds don't mess in their own nest. We are messing in our own nest, our own excrement, and runoff from where we live is poisoning us. And this is really clear this is a whole nother subject, but biosolids is just the most insane running thing that too has been going on since the 60s. And that's where so all this sewage. So you have sewage treatment plants, and then they whatever it's called, they refine the sewage, which is full of also all the drugs people take, all the pharmaceuticals, any poisonous things people put in the water, and then they take that stuff and they turn it into fertilizer, basically, and it's called A and B biosolids, and they're different standards, but some is liquid, some is pellet form. It's kind of like Milorganite, which is also from human waste, but they contract with many of the landowners to dump it on the lands for free as fertilizer, and then all that crap runs right back into the water. We're in a bad place as far as the health of our waters, and people have known this for 50 years. And as usual, it's just like someone who smokes, and I'm not saying you shouldn't smoke or drink, because that I'm not trying to judge anybody, but I'm saying, sometimes people who do things to hurt themselves out of enjoyment, all of a sudden they realize it's killing them, and they don't do anything until they hear they have cancer or something like that. And by that time, it's often too late. And is it too late for us? I don't think so. I think we're right before it's too late. But we, just like the smoker and the heavy drinker, we can kill ourselves if we don't face reality and make a lifestyle change.
So not only was the smoke from the farms surrounding Lake Okeechobee causing health problems in the community, but the fertilizer and runoff has caused toxic algal blooms, which are affecting the coastal bioregion's ecosystem, and this problem was predicted over 50 years ago. Around here?
Okay, well, I'm Paul Gray. I work for the Audubon Society. We're a bird conservation group. I've been working on this lake for 30 years now. For Audubon for about 21. I did my dissertation work on ducks on Lake Okeechobee, so I've been here for quite a while.
Okay, and what do you know about why is the lake important? Why is it important to South Florida and the people here?
Okay, Okeechobee is the largest, it's the most important water management feature in South Florida. The Everglades, it feeds the Everglades, and its watershed starts up at Orlando, where the Orlando International Airport is. If you've ever landed there to go to Disney World or whatever, you have stood in the very headwaters of Lake Okeechobee and of the Everglades. It is 100 miles up to Orlando. It's 100 miles down to Florida Bay from here. So we're right in the middle, and so it's this vast reservoir of water. It's 30 to 35 miles across. It's so big it creates its own weather. It doesn't have thunderstorms above it as much because it doesn't allow the convective thunderstorms to start. And so everybody wants something out of Okeechobee. The farmers want it for water supply. The cities want it for water supply. The Corps of Engineers wants it as somewhere when we have a big rainstorm or a hurricane, we have to put all this extra water somewhere, so they want to put water in here. I love it because it's a huge habitat for wildlife. It's about 1/3 of it is marshes, and it's one of the most famous bass fisheries in the country. It's full of wadybirds and Everglades snail kites, and it's just this incredible lake.
I think it has huge impacts on wildlife. Of course, it's toxic to humans and toxic to animals, and it affects their food sources because the light can't get to the seagrasses. The seagrasses die. I mean, it's horrible. Manatees, birds, fish, they either leave, just like human beings would. You run away if you can, and if you can't, you starve or die.
But what about the health of the people of Pahokee and Belle Glade now? Why do they have asthma? Is this trend something that dates decades ago? I was kindly allowed to interview a wonderful teacher and great-granddaughter of one of the original mayors from Pahokee.
My name is Janice Rosencrantz. I'm originally, I was born in West Palm Beach, Florida in 1955. My family lived in Belle Glade. Well, I can tell you that we moved to Lake Worth because as a child I had bronchial asthma. And the doctor recommended to my parents that we move east because of the sugarcane smoke blowing and causing the asthma. When we moved to Lake Worth, I never had asthma again. My grandfather, Ralph K. Harris, was the mayor of Belle Glade for some time. Back, I would say, somewhere around the 1930s. I can look that up for you. And then he ran the first telegraph business, I guess it was Western Union also. So they were kind of pioneers in the Glades. My mother's family was. My mother's family owned a successful insurance business, Harris Insurance. The demographics were different back then, of course, because it was a poor farming area, and my grandmother actually owned a rooming house or boarding house in which all of the residents were African American. My husband, who has spent a lot of time working out in the Glades, would tell the story of how the asphalt trucks that they used to truck the asphalt out to the Glades had to be tarped, and that the police would stop them and check their tarps, make sure they're tarped. But the other side of the coin was that the cane trucks would move up and down the highways and would not have to be tarped at all, and the police would never stop them to tarp the trucks. But it seemed like Big Sugar was always given a leadway. My grandfather died at an early age. He died at 49, and my mother had mentioned she thought it was some sort of stomach cancer. He was in a VA hospital for quite a while before he passed away. My uncle, my mother's brother, had Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's disease is not in our family history. He later succumbed to the Parkinson's disease. He lived almost his entire life in the Glades before he moved to Jupiter, Florida.
So all of your family members lived in the Glades for most of their lives, except you, of course, when you moved when you were 3.
So these poles right here, where the intake is for the water for the city of Okeechobee, and over here is the pump station, which actually draws the water out of the lake, and the pipes go underneath the Hoover Dike, and there's a water treatment plant on the other side of the dike that treats the water and gives it to the community. And when the water has high organics in it, if all you do is put chlorine in it to make it, sanitary, it creates the trihalomethanes, which are the THMs, and they're cancer causing. And so then you have to do more treatment to try to get rid of the THMs. It just costs you more money. And obviously, if you have harmful algae blooms, then they're creating toxins to protect themselves from getting eaten. Those toxins are in the water too. So the community has to spend a lot of money if the lake water quality is terrible. If the water quality is good, if the water's clear, it doesn't have a bunch of junk in it, then it's cheap for them. So it's our own drinking water. This is the water we drink in Florida, and so we should take better care of it.
is there another solution that we can work upon?
Well, I don't think it's really a solution. It's just an option. You know, we all have to take responsibility for ourselves to find ways to clean the algae out of the water or neutralize the algae. People to know what we've done to the earth, because right now we don't even know what we've done. We don't document it. Young generations grow up and they don't even know there used to be forest here. They don't even know where the rivers used to be. They don't even know. They think looking around that this is how it is, but it's not. They don't understand that we're living in flood zones that really some of them we shouldn't be in. And so there has to be a new generation of people to rebuild Florida, people to buy out those areas, and you have to apply for grants from the federal government, and it's a long thing, but you don't put roads where you know there's going to be flooding again and again and again, or there's already been flooding again and again. You try to restore wetlands in some areas. You kind of basically like, what if we just came to Florida today? What if we just came today and we were going to start developing Florida today? How would we do it? Would we still put cement and asphalt over every, business for cars? Would we, so the water can't go into the ground and recharge the aquifers and run off dirty into the river? We have to start thinking about, it's like the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Their theory is like, start with the end in mind. Like, if we could be in a good place, what would Florida be? And then you start backing out from there, how you would start to change it. And again, these are not things that you and I are going to fix in our lifetime. These are things that will be a goal, just like it was a goal for them to drain the swamp of Florida. They didn't do it in one, generation. They did it over a course of many. We have to think the same way. I think the only way that you can tug against power is have freedom of speech and freedom of expression and freedom of assembly, and you can inspire people to do those things. And once that reaches a tipping point in itself, as I think it did in 2013 and 2016, you start seeing changes when the general public, every Tom, Dick, and Harry type of person, demands change. Then these big corporations, no matter how much power they have or how many best friends they have in government, they have to start paying attention. A lot of impacts from population along the Indian River Lagoon and St. Lucie River, and also all the runoff from the agriculture that is the majority, almost 2/3 of our county, which has been routed to the river, so that now our estuary gets at least twice as much water as it was meant to naturally.
As Dr. Gray and I spoke, I asked him what he foresees to be a solution to this problem, and he admitted that there is a need for funding and support from the federal government. I believe that the government and big corporations owe the people of South Florida for allowing the damage to Lake Okeechobee to continue, causing the health of humans and earth to deteriorate. It is my hope that the people will take their freedoms back and realize that they are being taken advantage of by their own government and work together toward a healthier environment.
All I need is you. All I want